Imagine a world where if you spoke too loudly or too often, you had to undergo a surgery against your will that was intended to make you mute. That is the world that countless dogs live in thanks to a procedure known as debarking. Debarking, also known as devocalization, surgical silencing, devoicing, or bark softening, is a surgery to remove part of or all of a dog's vocal cords. Sometimes this mutes them 100%, sometimes it just makes the barking quieter. It's hard to know which will happen. It is medically known as a ventriculocordectomy, and this is what it sounds like.
What do you say? Yeah?
Now we know what debarking is. What are the pros and cons? Well, the pros are it keeps dogs in loving homes. They don't necessarily have to abandon them because of the barking. Increases the chances for dogs getting adopted. It lowers your chances of getting noise complaints in municipal areas. And it may even be necessary to treat airway obstructions or laryngeal paralysis. The cons, on the other hand, well, they're a bit of a doozy. For one, it's not always permanent. Sometimes the bark can come back after a few months. It doesn't get rid of the cause of the barking, and so it may result in the dog acting out in other ways because the anxiety is still there. That isn't to mention the complications. Oh boy, the complications. There's several complications associated with the surgery. First off, there's the risks associated with anesthesia. Then there's also post-op pain and or discomfort. And then there's also the chances of bleeding, swelling, infection, coughing, gagging, aspiration pneumonia, scar formation, dyspnea, stridor, stenosis, glottis stenosis, laryngeal web formation, or the bark returning, which negates the surgery completely. And here is what some vets have had to say on the subject.
Devocalization is always dangerous and always cruel, no matter who performs it or how.
Life after devocalization is miserable for animals.
It's disturbing that any veterinarian would perform what is indisputably an act of animal cruelty.
To expose an animal to such risks just to suppress his voice is barbaric.
Now, this isn't exactly a pro or a con, but a common argument in favor of debarking is the fact that in kennels with lots of dogs, sometimes you can get hearing loss. Now, the reason I say this isn't necessarily a pro or a con is because, yeah, hearing loss sucks. On the other hand, you can fix that without debarking the dog. You can change the architecture of the room, include sound dampening materials, or just give the employees earplugs. So what's our position on this controversial subject? Well, we had some trouble with that. We agreed that debarking should not be performed unless it is medically necessary. And beyond that, we had some trouble. Some of us thought that if it's a last-ditch effort to encourage adoption and prevent the dog from being euthanized, maybe that'd be a good thing to do. On the other hand, there's nothing saying that the dog won't be returned. So if you have a dog with a barking problem and you really don't want to debark them, what can you do? Well, there's some alternatives. The best alternative is positive reinforcement. It has been proved that this works the best. This is associated with all behavioral training and is generally done by either clicker training or the use of food, toys, play, and or praise as motivators. If your dog is food motivated, go ahead, give them treats when they're quiet. That way, they're associating the treats with the quiet. The negative reinforcements are things that are like, okay, you did the thing, stop it. So that includes shock collars and citronella collars. Citronella collars are kind of like shock collars, only they spray an orange scent into the dog's face in order to stun them into silence. It's not really suggested that you go these routes because you're just creating more anxiety. And if the dog is barking because of anxiety, you're just adding fuel to the fire. What about society as a whole? I mean, with a topic this controversial, there have to be some laws about it, right? Well, the American Veterinary Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, and the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association oppose non-curative debarking. So that's anything that isn't medically required. With the exception of if excessive attempts have been made to correct the behavior. Massachusetts, Maryland, and New Jersey have banned the behavior all out unless it's curative. In Pennsylvania, the procedure must be performed by a licensed vet on an anesthetized dog. The dog cannot be awake, and you have to be a vet. In California and Rhode Island, it is unlawful to require debarking as a condition of occupancy. So basically, if you're signing a lease for renting an apartment, the landlord cannot require that you debark the dog in order for you to sign that lease. In Ohio, vicious dogs are not allowed to be debarked, and no one can own a vicious dog if they know it has been debarked. The American Kennel Club, on the subject, has said, debarking is a viable veterinary procedure that may allow a dog owner to keep a dog that barks excessively in its loving home rather than to be forced to surrender it to a shelter. Debarking should only be performed by a qualified, licensed veterinarian after other behavioral modification efforts to correct excessive barking have failed. As with other veterinary medical decisions, the decision to debark a dog is best left to individual owners and their veterinarians. So what's our verdict? Well, we figure if people are going to own a dog, they should know and understand what goes into their care. Dogs bark. Be prepared to deal with it. Start with behavioral training. Debarking may be medically necessary. If that's the case, ensure the dog is treated properly. Take them to the best veterinarian you know, and ensure that they're getting the care they require. As with all controversial subjects, there's really no one answer as far as what the best way forward is. As it stands right now, though, many dogs are undergoing unnecessary surgeries in order to make our lives easier. There are a few arguments that are really good as far as being in favor of debarking dogs. For instance, it gives yappy dogs a chance to get adopted when maybe they would be put down otherwise. The other thing is sometimes it's medically necessary. But does that really counter the negatives of stealing a dog's voice? It's not always permanent, and it doesn't deal with the cause. If you're thinking of silencing your dog via this method, stop and think for a minute. Are you doing it for the dog's benefit or to make your own life easier?